What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today, as you all know, OTAs have wrapped up. The Giants are moving into mandatory mini camp this upcoming week, so there's going to be a lot to pay attention to, and there was a whole lot to take away from the 3 weeks of OTAs that the Giants just had, and one of those being the cornerback battle that might be forming in the starting lineup for the New York Giants. Yes, that's right, the Giants might be having a CB2 battle. Originally, when the offseason began and the Giants went out there and signed Paulson Adebo, the expectation was Adebo would be CB1 and Deonte Banks would move down into that CB2 role. However, that is anything but set in stone. The Giants are leaving that position open for a battle. It could be Deonte Banks. It probably will be, but there is an outside chance for CorDale Flott to take over the starting job opposite Paulson Adebo. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the takeaways from OTAs, what's gone down that's led me to make this episode and discuss a potential battle forming at CB2, and also talk about these two individual players, their statistics, and why this could be one of the battles to watch this summer for the New York Giants. So without further ado, let's waste no more time and dive right in. And I'm going to start with this quote from Dan Dugen of The Athletic, where he was kind of giving his takeaways from the 3 weeks of OTAs, what he saw, what he heard, and writing down some of the big storylines to follow. As we all know, the pads are not on during OTAs. They don't come on even during minicamp. The pads will be on at the end of July when training camp kicks off. And once we get there, that's when we'll get some more legitimate takeaways and some more legitimate insights into this team, who's really playing well, who's really falling behind. And once those pads come on, the physicality ramps up. We get that level of intensity back. Then we'll know what the roster is going to start to look like and what the depth chart might look like heading closer into the regular season. But this is what Dan Dugan of The Athletic had to say. Quote, Deonte Banks and CorDale Flott split reps as the starting outside cornerback opposite Paulson Adebo. That's an interesting development coming off of Banks' disappointing second season. And it's not as if Banks' reps were being limited because he worked with a second-team defense during some periods. So essentially, end quote there, but essentially what Dugan is saying, Banks wasn't giving up some of these first-team reps to Flott because he was limited with an injury or anything of that sort. He was rotating in with the ones and in with the twos, the same as CorDale Flott. Meaning, essentially, the Giants view these two players on the same equal plane. They don't view it as Deonte Banks has this job and it's his to lose. They view it as both of these players are fringe CB2/CB3 and competing for that CB2 job, and the other one will fall into CB3. Now, let me just say this. This is a pretty disappointing development considering the expectations for Banks when he entered the NFL. That rookie season, he showed a lot of flashes of promise as a CB2 opposite of Dory Jackson. This is a guy the Giants traded up a one selection to pick in the first round of the 2023 NFL draft. If you remember, I believe they selected him 24th. They held the 25th pick, moved up a spot in a trade with the Jaguars to take Banks and make sure that none of the teams behind them could trade up and snipe him from them. They really were high on Deonte Banks. I was high on Deonte Banks. The NFL was high on Deonte Banks. Kid had a lot of potential coming out of Maryland, was one of the best cornerbacks in college football prior to declaring for the 2023 NFL draft. But so far, we just haven't seen what made him great in college show up on the NFL playing field. There's been a lot of struggles for him. He's struggled in man coverage. He's looked pretty good in zone coverage at times, but when he is in man, he's been a liability. He let up 6 touchdowns last year. Oftentimes, teams would pick on Deonte Banks knowing either his effort wasn't there or his ball tracking skills weren't good enough to locate when the football was coming in and actually get in the way of any passes on contested catch opportunities. So oftentimes last season, what did we see? We saw Deonte Banks in the right place at the right time, in tight coverage, and unable to make the play on the football, and ultimately getting Randy Moss out there by a bunch of really good receivers, since he was the CB1 going up against top dogs. Like Amari Cooper, if you remember, early in the season versus the Cleveland Browns, Cooper had 2 head top catches on Banks last year. He just went up there and snagged them from him. Banks was right there, tight coverage, didn't get his head turned around in time. Terry McLaurin had a couple of those in their matchups this season as well. And then that's not even bringing up the effort questions that came about later on in the year. We all remember he was benched on Monday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers for a clear and obvious lack of effort. We remember against the Dallas Cowboys when he let up a 55-yard touchdown to CeeDee Lamb. He stopped chasing after CeeDee Lamb at the 25-yard line rather than trying his best to make a tackle within the 5-yard line. So there were questions about Banks last season, not just about his performance, but about his level of effort and intensity. And I think that more than anything is driving the Giants to say, hey, who do we have on this roster that's hungry, that won't have a lack of effort, that will compete for the full 60 minutes? And to be fair to him, yeah, he struggled, but that has been CorDale Flott. The kid has come to play no matter what. He has always gone out there with a high level of intensity and effort. If you remember in his 2022 rookie season, Flott kind of rotated in. He was the CB3. He would get some reps here or there in the starting lineup, played a little bit as the nickel, moved outside. The Giants were just trying to develop him and figure out where he fit best. But in the end of the season, late in the year, especially in that playoff game versus the Vikings, he had some big plays. He had a clutch pass breakup on a third down versus the Vikings in the wild card round. He had some other big moments down the stretch of that rookie season. And then, of course, in year two, what did we see? Well, we saw an unfinished product take the field for more snaps than he was ready for. And he didn't necessarily play well in year two. But last season, CorDale Flott started to turn a corner. I think he played the best football of his career last season. He played a career high 660 snaps. He was targeted in coverage 43 times, only let up 29 receptions for 347 yards, only let up one touchdown, had one interception, and had four pass breakups with only one penalty. In 2023, that was the big problem for CorDale Flott, if you remember, was the penalties. He had five of them committed into the second season of his career. Also in 2023, he had 432 snaps played in the slot and only 45 out wide. So I think really what it came down to for Flott, playing in the slot, he felt like he had to be more physical. He got a little bit grabby, and he wasn't so great in coverage and didn't play his best football as a result. But this past season, the Giants had him play 593 snaps out wide and only 62 in the slot, moved him outside, allowed him to play a game that's more akin to his playing style, and we saw a much better version of him. So now that they know which position CorDale Flott belongs in, they can develop him properly. And that position is outside cornerback, where Deonte Banks is supposed to be playing. But Deonte Banks last season, let's take a look at those stats. And fair warning, they weren't so pretty. He was targeted 73 times in coverage for 49 receptions allowed, 689 total yards, 6 touchdowns, didn't have an interception, did have 8 pass breakups to be fair. And this was with 705 of his snaps out wide and only 32 in the slot. But essentially, what we did see was a pretty poor demonstration of coverage abilities from Deonte Banks. And coverage abilities meaning ability to get his hands on the football. Because as I said at the top of the show, we saw time and time again, Banks would be in the right place at the right time. We know a few things about Banks in terms of his strengths. He's physical. He's freakishly athletic. I think he had a 9.99 relative athletic score, maybe even a perfect 10 coming out of the NFL scouting combine in 2023. So freakishly athletic, very physical. He was a pretty good tackler in college. That hasn't shown up in the NFL either. It really just feels like the NFL game, the speed and the strength of it being different, has gotten in the way for Banks, and he hasn't been able to match up his energy and his acumen to the professional level. Even though, again, we saw flashes of him playing at a high level in his rookie season, last year, just a major step backwards. And one thing that I know for certain for cornerbacks in the NFL, confidence is everything. If you are not playing with confidence, if you do not feel like you can cover the guy in front of you, you will not be able to cover the guy in front of you. And honestly, that is what I think it came down to for Deonte Banks. I think he lost his confidence. I think his coverage skills suffered as a result. And I think his ability to lock in on a play-by-play basis was completely hampered by a lack of confidence. So this upcoming season, why I think he could bounce back? Well, the Giants did add talent around him. Javon Holland on the back end should help Deonte Banks play with more confidence, knowing he's got a legitimate Pro Bowl talent safety on the back end who can save his ass if he needs to. How about opposite him, Paulson Adebo being in the starting lineup as the CB1? Well, now Banks, you can have a little bit more confidence because you're not going up against CD Lamb and the other WR1s in the league every single week. Now you are going up against WR2s, and opposite CD Lamb is George Pickens, so it's still kind of a good luck thing. But listen, I think there's going to be many different ways where this defense, with a pass rush in front of these cornerbacks, getting after the quarterback, that's going to help the cornerbacks play, Deonte Banks play with more confidence, having more talent in the secondary, knowing, hey, I've got guys around me who can do their job at a high level. That's going to help maintain confidence. So just generally speaking, I think we'll get a more confident version of Deonte Banks and hopefully a better version of him this season. But there are so many question marks about him, and he is such an unknown that I actually welcome this position battle and think this is a good idea from the New York Giants. In the past, I feel as though the Giants have given starting jobs to players who are undeserving of those opportunities. Essentially, they'll have a guy who was drafted in the first round or the second round who they really wanted to be a starter, so they make him a starter. But meanwhile, there might be a younger player or maybe even an older player, more experienced player behind them on the depth chart that's outperforming them, and they can't get into the starting lineup. And it's really just about status because Banks was drafted in the first round. I don't want CorDale Flott's development to be stunted as a result. If Flott is playing better this summer, if he is the more polished cornerback, if he is the guy who's shutting down the WR2 being Darius Slayton throughout training camp, the opposing WR2s in preseason, if Flott is the better performing cornerback, then yes, he should be the CB2 to start the regular season. And I'll say this again. I'm a huge Deonte Banks fan. I do believe in him. I think he's going to bounce back, but I can't bank on potential. The Giants cannot bank on potential. They need a bona fide, experienced, proven talent in that secondary because they need to win games this year in order to save the jobs of Joe Shane, Brian Dable, and everybody else running this show. So they need proven starting caliber talent in this lineup. Otherwise, everybody is going to suffer as a result. And if there is one position that is a big question mark for me in this Giants defense, it's CB2. I think on the interior of the defensive line, you've got an absolute dog in Dexter Lawrence and some good depth behind him with Nacho and Darius Alexander. On the edge, we've got that three-headed monster with Burns, Thibodeau, and Carter. Linebacker room, I really like Okereke, and I really like Micah McFadden. Safety, they just signed Javon Holland, who's really good, and Tyler Nubin's a good player as well. Dane Belton's a good depth piece. Cornerback, CB1, Paulson Adebo. I think he can be a pretty good CB1. Never has been one before, though, so he's a question mark his own right. And then CB2, Deonte Banks, will he actually play at a starting caliber level this year? So he is the biggest question mark of this defense. That position is the biggest question mark. And that's why I think the Giants are wise to survey all of their options. Have Banks and Flott split these reps, compete alongside one another, let the best man win. And if Flott happens to be the better player, then he should get the starting job. And you know what? The cornerback position, it's an often injured one. We see a lot go down, and we see a lot of players go down. And so Banks, as long as you bide your time and keep doing the right things behind the scenes, you'll get your opportunity again, whether that's this year, later on in the season, or if it's even next season. The opportunity will arise for Deonte Banks. But the Giants can't afford to wait, and they can't afford to bank on potential. They need to go with the better, more proven player. And if Flott plays better throughout the summer, I do want to see him in the starting lineup, despite how much I like Deonte Banks and how confident I am in him as an individual player who can develop in the right circumstances. Just got to see it on the field first before we can hand him the starting job. So hope that's how the Giants play it. I hope this is not something where they hand it to anybody. Every position should be up for grabs and given to the best performing player throughout the summer. But yeah, this is an interesting development. CB2 battle, CorDale Flott versus Deonte Banks. What are your thoughts on it, guys? Who do you think is going to win this position battle? Who do you want to win this position battle? I hope it's Deonte Banks. But honestly, I'm open-minded. Whoever performs better, I hope we see in the lineup. And I just want to see a better New York Giants defense this upcoming season. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, comment your thoughts on this topic down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure there's a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go New York Giants.
Perfect.